Very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I am very much thankful to PNDS and especially the scientific committee for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this second international conference 2022 on triple burden of malnutrition. My name is Saima Rashid, working as a consultant dietitian at National Medical Center, and I am an executive council member of PNDS. Today I am here to present my research titled to find out the dietary practices and the type of food intake of Pakistani population residing in both urban and rural areas. Next please. Okay, before we proceed further, I would like all of you to draw your attention upon the background that if we see the geographical classification, Pakistan is located in Southeast Asian region, and in this particular part of the world, obesity in general and central obesity or abdominal obesity in specific is becoming a very serious health issue nowadays. There are so many confounding factors, but we can say that amongst all those factors, one of the most important dietary factor could be the Asian diet is very much inclined towards the excessive consumption of carbohydrates, and especially the refined carbohydrates. Well, this is a very loud statement, but unfortunately we don't have any evidence to support this statement, and we don't have any our local data available that if we are able to do so, and if there is going to be good information provided, then we will be coming up with more better outcomes in order to make and formulate more appropriate dietary guidelines for our particular Pakistani population. Next please. So the objectives of my study was to find out the eating practices in both the groups, and second objective, I was in the beginning of my research, I was very excited, and I really wanted to look into the dietary practices and the differences between the urban and rural population. Is there any cultural practices which are influence on the nutritional status and the dietary patterns and practices of Pakistani population? So that's why I decided to carry out this study. Next please. Coming towards the methodology, a convenient random sample of both urban and rural population was taken from my hospital staff and from the outpatient department. A sample of 50 subjects were included, and the age bracket range in between 18 to 45 years of age. A questionnaire comprising of 10 questions was there to identify the appropriateness of macronutrient intake. I used the food frequency method to collect the diet history from the respondents, and as a reference, I used that daily food guidelines to figure out that what's the consumption of macronutrients, and if we talk about the 5 basic food groups. So in our region, in our part of this particular urban and rural population, what's the difference between the macronutrient consumption? The people who are coming in outpatient department, not the patients, the attendants, because we don't want to have a subject having some comorbidities and diseased conditions. So that's why I included the attendants, those who are coming in OPDs as an attendants, they from villages. They were included to represent rural population, and whereas my hospital staffs were there to represent the urban population. Statistical package for social sciences version 21 was used to analyze the records, and chi-square was applied to see the comparison between the two groups. Next please. Okay, now I am directly jumping into my results. Surprisingly, very eye-opening results were there that in the two groups, if we talk about the macronutrient consumption, there was no as such statistical difference amongst the two groups. Next please. Okay, if you see that I've looked into the different food groups. If we talk about the starch list, there was no like statistical difference, and the p-values showed 0.41, which means that both the groups are doing almost the same practices in terms of starch, which I mentioned early in my background slide, that we Asians are having very high carbohydrate, and we are much more inclined towards the consumption of refined carbohydrates. Okay, if we looked into the meat group, again this results were not statistically significant, and the result showed p-value of 0.17, and same as in the fat group. I considered 5 teaspoons, which makes about 5 servings or 5 choices of dietary fats, as a reference and as a standard, and again there was no statistical significant difference in the both groups. Only one area in which the results were like significant was the vegetable consumption, and in this regard, in this particular area, the rural group were doing better job, because as compared to the other food groups, they were doing better job. Okay, and the mean calorie intake was 1751 kcal per day, and unfortunately we don't have, as Dr. Rumaina Iqbal yesterday in our inaugural session, she also mentioned, and Dr. Nilofer Athar today, she also mentioned that average standard Asian calorie intake for an adult on regular basis is found to be estimated about 2300 kcal per day, and this guidelines, these numbers were presented by FAO in their second world survey, and if we make it as a reference, so in one side we are having this impression that okay, our respondents are consuming less calories as compared to their standard recommendations, which is 2300, and the mean calorie intake was on regular basis as about 1751. But if you look into the other side of the picture, you will find this, that about 59% of the rural population and 55% of the urban population were having BMI greater than 23 kilogram per meter square, which is a above cutoff value for Asian population. These cutoff values was presented by WHO so many years ago, in back 2000, and majority of the respondents were having greater BMIs. I looked into the visceral fat composition as well. I used that bioelectrical impedance analysis method, and most of the respondents from both the urban and rural population were having normal visceral fats. But surprisingly, 84% of the rural population were having normal visceral fats as their standard cutoff values, whereas if we talk about the rural population, the percentages were not that much. 72% were having normal cutoff values for visceral fat. And next please, next result. As I've mentioned, I've already covered. Next please. Okay, so only this one area, a vegetable group, in which the rural population were doing a good job. Next please. In conclusion, what we have found that in terms of macronutrient consumption, there was no statistical significant difference between the two groups. Only one area, vegetable consumption, in which rural population were doing better job, and this disparity in observation may be attributable to this first thing, that maybe vegetables are cheap, they are low cost, and another thing is their accessibility, that in villages maybe vegetables are more available. That's why our rural population are more towards the consumption of vegetables as compared to the urban. Thank you so much.